Hi, it's Hans at ahappierman.com. Today's topic is how to help your children thrive. Well, I've got a video on how to thrive, meaning how to help yourself thrive, and that's the most important, because how can you help anyone else thrive if you're not, right? That'd be kind of ridiculous. If you're not something, then how can you explain it to someone else? So I'm thriving, like I mentioned, and I've defined thriving for me and how I want to live my life, and everything is going along very well, and I'm thriving, and I'm working toward thriving even more. There's other things to move along. So that's how to help your children thrive is, obviously the big one is by example. So they see you thriving and they say, Dad or Mom or whoever, they are doing well. I would like some of that myself. So for me, my dad, he thrived, and I used him as an example of an excellent way to live, and the things that I didn't want for myself from his life, well, I discard those, and the things that he does very well and that I want for my life, I work on those. I try to add those in because he's an example of someone who's thriving. Now, he's passed away, so I don't have the example in front of me all the time, but it's it's up here, it's in my memory. I know kind of what he might do, how he might approach things. He thrived in many areas, and that's a great example for how I can look to that example and model some of my behaviors off of that. And the areas that I saw he didn't thrive so much, well, do something different. So, and that's how you would help your kids the most, is by you thriving. And then what you want to give them space to work on their lives. I think where a lot of parents go wrong is they spend a lot of time and effort micromanaging their children's life, not just when they're little and babies. Of course, you have to micromanage them then, but then as they age, you have to keep backing off and backing off and backing off and backing off from that to give them the space for them to thrive. And you know what? Part of it is what helps is to be more of a lazy parent. You don't want to always be hovering and doing. You'd rather do your own thing, and I think that's a fairly good thing. If you're not lazy about that, to try to be a little more lazy. Let your kids do. Let them be. You set your firm boundaries, but you set them in a manner that makes sense. Some parents are so strict and so firm, and they have so many boundaries and rules that, well, how is a child, a middle schooler, a grade schooler, a high schooler, a teenager, a young adult, how are they supposed to thrive with all these rules, right? When you're living in a excessively rule-based lifestyle, there's no way to thrive. So that's kind of a side thing, is to minimize the amount of rules that are hard and fast that might be very hard for another person to follow. That's the space, right? Lesser rules provides more space. So what is that? Now, the example, you give them a good example of yourself. You give them some space with a lack of excessive rules. And the next one would be guidance. So, some people would call that teaching, some people would call that following rules, but it really, it's guidance is, kind of watching someone and kind of pointing out, this is what I, and then you can kind of use yourself an example. This is what I might do in this situation, and then give them the opportunity to think that over. You start off with where you grab them before they run out in the street, right? So they don't die when they're young kids, and then you transition that to guiding them and telling about the enormous dangers of getting hit by cars, and you see what I mean? That's guidance, gentle guidance. And eventually, you don't have to worry about that. But there will be other dangers as a child grows, that you have to guide them. And then you guide them with stories and examples from either your life or other people's lives about, well, maybe the dangers of drinking and driving. All of so-and-so got killed in a car accident. My uncle, my cousin, they'll give them the personal examples, talk about it, so they understand it in a personal way. The dangers of drinking, over-drinking, drinking and driving, drugs. Of course, drugs are, kind of the way the young kids, reckless. Maybe that's all lumped into a reckless behavior. You want to have fun and enjoy your life, but avoid excessive recklessness, because that's where a lot of the young people meet their maker. I told you I have the death story about my friend's son getting caught in a car accident, and his thing, it wasn't a reckless behavior, it was just poor weather. And that gets to the guidance of, well, when the weather is bad, you have to be even more careful and change your behavior to work on the weather. And I've had these kinds of conversations with my son and daughter many, many times, and I'm always looking at it from the cautiousness. Selfishly, I want them to live long, healthy lives. I want to enjoy them the rest of my life. So it makes sense as a parent to caution your kids to avoid excessive recklessness. But, they will be a little bit reckless. I think that should be always on the forefront of a parent's mind or anyone's mind, that younger people will tend to be a little bit reckless. They need to make their own mistakes, but you guide them to keep that recklessness under control. All right? That's the guidance that they most need, because if they continue to live and continue to have a good life without being reckless, well, your job as a parent is going to be a success, because you want to get them from the birth up into their adulthood in a thriving manner. You want them to eventually go out on their own and have a good life. So the guiding, what else would you guide on? Well, and then the other part is to thrive. Thriving would imply you're doing well financially, paying your bills and having some money, and not be stressed about money. So you would be wanting them to work and be always working, moving toward taking care of themselves. There's really nothing more expensive for a person than taking care of another adult. It's extremely expensive and extremely unrewarding. Let's just call it that, right? So you don't want to be taking care of your adult children. It's your job to take care of them as a child, and And as they age and get out of the teenage years into young adulthood years, you want to be transitioning them away from your pocketbook so they can take care of themselves. Right? A person cannot thrive if they rely on their parent for money. All right? So as much, even if you have lots and lots and lots of money and you don't mind and you love to give to them, and yeah, it is extremely nice to take care of your family very well and to give them as much as they need, but they're not going to thrive if you do that. Right? They can't thrive because the thriving is a person is an individual thing where a person is doing for themselves in a manner that makes sense to them. So you got it. That's the space, and that's the guidance, and that's the that's your mindset. Is this child of mine is going to succeed, and I'm going to guide them into some sort of a job or career or livelihood that will allow them to thrive. And you can give examples of other people. You can help them. You can get them into college. You can get them into the trade school. You can get them into the whatever, right? Apprenticeships. Get them into a job. Help them, but be insisting gently that they be taking care of themselves. So that's what I'm done doing. I've talked about another thing, the goals, big goals and little goals, about how I'm in this transition stage and to move to a different city. So my big goal is to move, and the second big goal is to transition. Well, I have my daughter is living with me, and part of that transition is to have her not live with me. So as kind of bittersweet as this is for both me and her, because I've loved living with her, I've never had anybody I've enjoyed living with as her. It's delightful, but I want to ensure that she thrives throughout the rest of her life. And in order to do that, part of the reason I'm moving is to, break that bond. And the bond is strong, let me tell you. There's nobody I love taking care of more than her. And part of the reason is she's not very hard to take care of. She kind of does many things for herself. Man, the light is just terrible here, right? Sorry about that. I'm getting used to this, where I'm going. So she's thriving. How I've raised her, I feel very good about how I've raised my son and my daughter to thrive. But I have to ensure that she continues to thrive more. Okay? So it's part of the reason I need to split up from her, to help her to thrive. So it's going to be painful, because you'll find, your children, you love them more than anything, and you love having them around, you love knowing where they're at, you love taking care of them, and you love everything about them. And they can be so delightful, they're down the hall, and they got their own bedroom, they do their own thing, but they're there, you're helping them, you're watching out for them, you're whatever with them, you're their dad or your mom, right? So so I'm a little bit bittersweet about this, but I have to make sure that she's going to thrive. So I'll be moving to a city about an hour drive away from her. Like I I said, she's been with me full time for about nearly 8 years, and these years have been very, very good to both of us. We've made tremendous progress on our lives, and my son too. He was with me for all those early years of the 8. So yeah, that's how I'm trying to help her thrive, and of course I'll continue to guide, continue to see, continue to monitor, continue to help to ensure that she thrives. And just as I'm doing with my son, he doesn't live with me, he lives with his girlfriend, and he is thriving by doing that. And I see him, and I guide him, and I talk to him, and I text him, and I email him, and I watch out for him, and I do the best I can for him, and I take care of a couple things for him, right? So I'll continue to do that. You might need to lend a hand, but you as a parent want to ensure that your kids thrive. All for now.